Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the McConaughey at YouTube with an update to the salt mines injection moulding project. We finally have the B-100 injection moulder sitting on the table, bought from injectionmoulding.net, or the link down below. Galomb Inc from the United States. The idea is to unbox, show the internals. It was very good to deal with David, the owner, and I believe sole employee, operator, engineer, the guy who made this rig. Very helpful, was very accommodating to what I needed, answered questions, and even though I was a bit nervous to send so much money to a very small company I didn't quite understand or sure about, he pretty much extended himself to accept the payment I was willing to put in to get security, and gave me the best deal humanly possible. So he's packaged all this up, sent it to me. It was very easy to get it across. Got caught in customs, assisted with that as well. Very happy with customer service. Anybody else interested in getting this, it's very worthwhile or important to note that this is the ideal source to go to. I also bought a book, Injection Molding to Build Your Own. So I spent about $4 or $5 thousand US dollars on this machine, being shipped to Australia. Other fees, taxes and whatnot went up to $8,000. You can build one far cheaper by doing a lot of collecting of materials, cutting, fabricating, welding, wiring and gathering components, or you could just buy one straight out of the box for this project. The book is quite excellent, even though it's in all Imperial American measurements, but it is what it is. Components can be bought on eBay. Right into the unboxing. In theory it should be pretty well packed. Here we go. It's probably one of the most expensive unboxings from the Galomb modelling community. We have low density polystyrene, a couple of 100 grams or pound or whatever. This was thrown in as a freebie packaged manual, which I'm going to read quite extensively. We've got a small, very heavy box here. So inside our little box here, looks like we'll be doing a bit of assembly. Various components, O-rings, powdered colorants, gaskets and whatnot. Same nippers that I actually sell in the salt mines, paddle pop sticks. I'm sure the instructions will be covering the use of all of it. Nice rubber handle and mold release. What we've got here is wrapped up molds. One of them is the test mold and the other one is the mini master mold. So the ejection bit out, and you can see by the lines inside it's been CNC routed, and this mold makes some sort of round puck, and you've got the injection point. Some of the other molds advertised were far longer, so we don't have to worry about very tiny components. Be able to mill something much bigger and have a more spaced out, longer or bigger parts, but that's just a solid piece that's going to punch out. Pretty much size comparison with the modelling support, good stuff. It can definitely go within the weight limit of a runner such as this, so we can see that everything is very possible within this realm. Finally, we're going to take off the foam, and look at that. Got the main mechanism, the box, the chamber, the hopper. Everything is beautifully packaged. Ooh, heavy thing. we'll get it out of the box and put it down, I suppose. Look at that. Just put the plastic in there and it just plunges straight down, and the length of the rod is the heat chamber. See if there's any further goodies hiding in here. And more plastic as promised hiding at the very bottom. We've got HIPS and PS, polystyrene, high impact polystyrene. The magic materials we're going to want to use. The little box, this side up, I kind of opened it from the other side. Beautiful made in US sign. This should be all the electricals. Electrical input, the 240 volt variant, takes a jug plug so I can stick it in pretty easily. On off switch and all the dials we desire. Bag of goodies, we'll lay out all the small bits in a minute. Got some declaration of conformity regarding patents and all that sort of stuff. Not too familiar with that as I don't use a lot of stuff from the US. Added to the paperwork. We've piled all of our paperwork. It is definitely a bit of reading material. And within the box we've got the cleaning kit, a few handles, appropriate cables, as well as the whole machine in question. I'll be getting very intimate with that. And in the other box, the power box, as well as the 3 bags of resin. We'll get through this box. And one by one, spray on mold release agent instructions sprayer. I've already talked about side cutters, nozzle removal O-rings, bolts, as well as an Allen key, the gasket for underneath this hopper, pour tube, so suppose you pick up the resin with this and pour it in. Now this is the sample parts. One of the first one is this. It's a rubbery, almost polycap like material. This means we can make polycaps, fully articulated, pull apartable model components. This is very, very exciting. The rest of them, this is a semi-flexible polyethylene style part. This one's a lot more denser, sort of a harder plastic. We can look really close in. This is just a copy of a typical cheap $2 shop toy soldier in all its glory, and it's slightly transparent, so I would like to learn about that and that sort of plastic. That could be very fun, very Zoid-esque. A very, very hard puck with the sprue on it, which is from our mold, and this is also a rubbery material, a much larger part. This will be the size of the parts that we're going to be looking at. Purge block, I assume it involves cleaning or just plastic going through it. With raw materials, apparently you can mix little pigment colorants and colour the plastics, a lot like what Bandai does with their parts. This strange blue thing is one of the most hardcore Ziploc bags I've come across with a metal zipper. The instructions simply state put the plastic pellets, a few paddle pop sticks worth of colorant in the bag, and shake it like hell until it's coated. Add into the machine. This bag contains little cloth squares with a circle in the center. You add it to this to put it right down the chamber to clean it out of molten plastic. Last of the items is some mold stoppers, screws and a thumb thing, little flashlight, paddle pop sticks, a handle, and needle nose pliers. Here is the whole collection of bits, all unboxed. Now all of this can be very overwhelming, so we're going to start with this yellow slip and follow the instructions. After that, once we've assembled it, we're going to be reading the greater amounts of paperwork. First, we're going to slide the handle right on. Next, we're going to be using this little packet. The catch pin screws right on here, all the way to the end, and with the accompanied Allen key, which we'll keep for dismantling if we ever have to, we tighten it until it stops. Beautiful. So it catches into place as so. Mold stop is right in the side here. And this screws in, and you can adjust it so it's easy as sliding the mold in, closing the handle and ejecting down. Gonna need this little bag. The gasket has a breakaway there which faces the front here, and wrap it around to the best of your ability without tearing the thing, as so. Next step is to read this document, operating instructions, and have a good understanding. Quick look at the index. We've got all the safety setup, molds and whatnot. Everything here is what we're exactly after, so I'm just going to sit down and absorb it here for as long as it takes. After reading this manual, I am extremely confident. It was very well written, explained and walked you through everything, the safety tips and whatnot. Just the right amount of information. Not a lot of pictorials, but it gives you a great enough amount of easy read tips to go forward. We got a few bits and pieces to set up electrically with the heat box. I have the temperature control box right here. Both need to be in the off position. The machine also does need to be bolted down. When you're turning the crank, it can tip over. For bolting into the table, you get this nice little handy guide that you put anywhere you need it and drill the holes nice and easily without measuring up. And these are the back sockets to start assembling the cables. Starting with the yellow one, there's a smaller and larger pin, smaller positive. The positive goes in the top or the smaller hole, like so. Next we assemble with this. The IC end goes into the top socket of the controller. The cannon plug sticks right into the molding machine, and you tighten the shroud or sleeve. My only complaint is the incorrect IC lead being thrown in. Not too sure what this is, but this is what we have in Australia. Little plastic shield, 2 active and a neutral pins, and a nice big earth. Here it is all set up. Now a few tips that came. We've got these wing nuts with a lot of washers in between. This can move the plates so we can add far wider molds, which was a concern, and that isn't really a big deal. Once it goes beyond the stopping plates here, you can't really go any further. I considered removing it or putting a modified stopping plate to go just a little wider, though I suppose it could just spread out in the other direction. A thing to note is this is the Ramrod that it refers to, and this black coating is very special. When plastic's in a melted state, it likes to stick to metal, and it could cause problems here in the nozzle. And if you keep this lowered, so keep it up as much as you can, and avoid cleaning it or scratching it, as it'll prolong the life. It's almost as in the inner part of the chamber, but most importantly, this rod is the life force of the machine. You want to use it in a consistent fashion when you have plastic in the tube. There for too little, for too long is very troublesome in burning plastic and doing very poor injections. Also, there is about a 3mm gap or less in between the mould and the nozzle, and supposedly when you pull it down and there's plastic, there's some sort of connection made and injects the plastic without issue. After you put in plastic and wait for about 4 minutes, you can pretty much inject every few minutes to heat up the new plastic inside. The first shot's going to be a tad on the dodgy side. Every other one is alright. A lot of tips on buying plastics. They call them polymers or resins in this terminology. A few obvious things about how not to avoid warranty. Tips on certain plastics you can and can't use. Some of them have moisture absorbed into it and can cause all sorts of problems. The useful tips is also troubleshooting, and I won't go into too much details unless we experience it in our journeys. Very, very helpful. To center the mold, I've lined up these two dots, pulled back the bolt, and I'm going to keep screwing in until it makes contact with the mold. Half a twist backwards, push it back in, and every time we ram the mold in, it's going to fit in exactly right for rapid placement and injecting. We're going to make the nut hug the surface to keep this from moving around. So pretty useful. Now I just absolutely love all of these little stickers and hints all over the place. Release agent is required for the rod, maybe the mold. So we got these man release agent 205 release agent and a pump. Put the pump in to stop evaporation. You put the black lid back on. Have a quick look at the instructions. Very professional technical data sheet. The two most important aspects is it's got a very high temperature resistance and it works on multiple materials. Takes a tad to dry when brushed on. It's misted on ideally for the rod and molds, whatnot. Small shelf life, and my absolute love, a safety material data sheet. Now we're going to read, which is the final step on the yellow slip, the two data sheets regarding the temperature controller. We've got the control face going on, and then the mechanized control panel, which I probably should have showed off earlier a lot sooner. The Model B-100. It'll also refer to your individual serial number for repairs and whatnot, and it's located back here. Okay, some serious safety notes from this. It's very complex and it goes into stuff that may not necessarily be useful for this model, but when you hook in the mains power, make sure all cables are connected. There's live power coming out of the terminals from the box to the injection molder. Having it disconnected and touching the active and neutral will shock or electrocute you. And make sure each section is connected as appropriately. So you do not disconnect anything during operations or when it's turned on, only from the main source or to turn off. Things can go haywire. We're dealing with high temperatures around the 1 to 200 degrees. It all seems to operate in Fahrenheit, which is a tad annoying to me, though I might be able to set it to degrees just to suit my flavour. Second point is it has low capacitors. Pretty much in layman's terms, it holds power. So when you turn it off, do not disconnect it for a good minute, as disconnecting it and touching pins by accident will still shock you because it's still retaining power inside of it. Turn everything off, leave it for a while, then disconnect it to prevent shocking. That's as well as all the obvious, keep it away from water, moisture, flammables, vibrations. all the usual stuff. You will have to read the instructions and warnings and have a good understanding, but the electrical stuff is something people can get very easily complacent with. All from the big document, as well as the interface, and we're given all of these numbers will appear for settings, faults, all that sort of stuff. We'll revisit that, but our introduction is going to be in this document, setting it up so it is suitable for our machine. So we've also got a pictorial guide to the wires, which we talked about how important it is. Now regarding all the settings and limits, it's pre-programmed in the factory, so all we have to worry about is setting it up. All the alarms are put in so it does not go over 300 degrees, 600 Fahrenheit, and pretty much set the setting and punch in. If you are familiar with microcontrollers, controllers, all that sort of stuff, such as I am, this gives you all the programming stuff to have a play with that. As it's all pre-programmed and I'm not a big fan of messing around, I'm just going to use it as intended. It'll be a lot easier that way. So that's everything we really need to know. I'm going to set up the mold first, which we've already placed in. Have an understanding how it goes. These are the keys to set it together. We've got the sprue mark there and the puck we're going to make. Now you can see these really fine scribing lines in there. None of it is mentioned in any of our literature, but these are air vents. They're about 1 to 2 microns, not big enough for actual material to pass, but for air to escape. And as there's a channel there, it's very likely a flash mark is going to be created. This will help us prevent air bubbles. So we're going to put our molds together to make sure it's lined up properly with the holes. Everything is set up right. It's all adjusted, and turning our vise to make sure it's nice and stuck. As I don't have it bolted in, I put my hand on the handle as I'm screwing it on and off, not to overturn. Start off with turning on our temperature controller. So we're sitting at 54 Fahrenheit. Let's use the HIPS plastic and go straight for 430 by pushing the up button until we get to the number we want. And we're going to push the B button, which is the one right here, to set it in and reach our temperature. The red button will keep climbing until we're ready to go. Next we turn this button on, and that way our mechanism is going to actually start heating up. You can see the numbers are now rapidly climbing. Got our release agent, and we'll spray each side of the rod. We are at temperature. I had to adjust it, so I set it for the wrong plastic. We'll use the low density polyethylene, and we've got our little pour scoop going on. This is where we could go to our next step. See, they're tiny little plastics. We've got the hopper, and we'll just chuck it all in and give it a few minutes to melt. We're going to compress what's inside the chamber. You do this for your first pressing. I've put a wood stick underneath, and in a few minutes I'll pull the plunger. Just compressed it, poured a few more in, and filled in a second amount. We'll do an injection in 2 minutes time. Looking down in there, it doesn't look like it is in pellet form anymore, and I'm going to try to inject. And suppose we go down, and I feel a bit of resistance until it stops. the plunger has gotten coated with a bit of plastic, so utilising our little tweezers, we've pulled it off, put it back in the direction of the hopper. For our next shot of plastic is way too much. I'm going to have to remove that out with our stick. Now we can see the plastic, which is still warm and in rubber form on the top. It takes only about 30 seconds or so to cool down, and you can pretty much demold. Wow, look at that. It's probably still soft from the heat. It's quite cold to the touch. That was absolutely amazing. I'll probably push a second mold out just to see if there's any improvement in quality, but yeah, you've got a bit of it's pretty smooth. I'll chuck some paint on it later and see what it looks like for the modelling crowd of people. But yes, we've just injected something, and that was really easy, really quick. Now for our second injection. So you push it down, and it's pushed the whole assembly so it's touching the model. And then you use a bit of strength and you hold it all the way down, straight back up. Peel off the excess plastic, which I like to just roll up back in a ball and chuck in. I'm going to finish up, so you'd put more plastic in, though I don't want to inject anymore. Pull the mold out. That's been about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Open. Bang. Mold. Still a bit soft, but I probably should have, yeah, I left the fingerprints and whatnot on it. I probably should have left it in there a bit longer, but there you go. That is a casted piece. We've got the Purge Board, which we're going to slide right in. Give it a couple of minutes and just purge everything out. So I'll put the camera on the side, pull down, see how it oozes out. That's going to be pretty hot and dangerous. That's a full shot of plastic, and that's quite a bit of plastic. It's still oozing out, and I suppose with a stick you could just break it up, peel it all off when it's done, give it a few seconds to dry. I've turned off the box. I'm going to turn off the controller, and just because power's been cut does not mean that it's safe. Everything is very hot. We'll allow it to cool down before putting it away. To make up the cleaning ramrod, I've pulled everything together. We need to get the cloth over the plastic O-ring right on the aluminium rod. This is the entirety of the cleaning set. To get access, remove this pin and bolt where the plunger goes all the way in. Normally you'll do this at operating temperature, and that's the look of our ramrod. And as it's turned on with our stick, we're able to plunge it in, and then you're able, while still hot, find the nozzle and squeeze it all the way throughout, and probably collect the plastic at the bottom with the tweezers. All of this was pulled out of the nozzle. This is done a few minutes after operation as it's cooling down, and to tell the truth, it did an okay job. The ramrod also collected quite a bit of plastic, so might not be a bad regime. To reassemble, the rod goes back in as to not lose any parts, the handle through, and just thread it all together. The safety, don't forget the safety pin, and back in its open position for storage. And that is absolutely it. Unboxing, setting up, operating with the test mold. Having a very close look on the far right is the sample that came in, absolutely blemish free. The two to the left, the far left, which is the first one, there's quite a few dense blemishes. I think I demolded way too early. There could have been some debris, whatnot. The second one was far more superior. They always say your second and forward injections will be much better. I'm going to keep testing and playing around until I can get the clear mold nice and clean. Until I've got that absolutely down pat. This is the LDPE resin. I don't have intention of production or using this much. I'll keep using it for tests, and when that runs out, it runs out. I'm going to purely stick to the styrene as it reacts to hobby glues and all of that jazz. It's really good to have something to play with for a period of time. The next party trick using this tiny mold, and my actual full production ones will be far bigger than this, is replicating a heat hawk, a Bandai heat hawk. If I can capture the same detail in plastic and mold this successfully in materials, I will try a couple of them. Then we can start getting prototypes out, making molds of the prototypes, and once we've got something where it's going to be permanent, then roll out steel molds. That will be covered in definitely later videos. What I do need to do, there is a section about disassembling the nozzle and changing the O-ring. This has not been covered in this video. The supplementary one will be done far later once required, after I've done multiple videos. When a bigger mold is introduced, removing these and resetting it will also be covered. So it's going to be a regular on the playlist. As well as any faults, issues and problems, which I don't see that are happening. I'm really glad that I bought this commercial one and not built one myself, as the rod I could see being a huge problem, and a handmade nozzle and lining up the whole thing can be an issue if it's actually not machined, cut and welded together. Absolutely ideal. Shelling out the extra money is going to save me a ton of time, and that crank just really transfers the power nicely. You do have to put a bit of arm strength into squeezing it all together, and it doesn't have as much leverage on the other model. Luckily, I am a fairly burly fella. Anywho, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for all the salt mines and support. This is just going to keep going in mold making and product design of something small, something basic, and we'll keep going to kits and more fancy things in the future. And hopefully at some point where it will be accessible to you guys to purchase if you feel like, utilize and include in your hobby. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content and catch you guys later.